Hello everyone, you're on the channel Tender Art Mentor. My name is Natalie, here we talk about art. Today I'll take you to a very interesting, unique place. I've been here 3 times already, but each visit feels like the first. The place is called the Pinto Art Museum. In Spanish, Pinto means door, and it is a door into the world of contemporary Filipino art. To truly understand this place and feel it, let's start with the history. Because it did not appear by accident. Everything began with a chain of events that later influenced contemporary Philippine art. Meet Dr. Joven Cuanang, a neurologist, and these are students from the College of Fine Arts at the University of the Philippines. At first glance, what could a doctor studying the brain possibly have in common with a group of young artists? It turned out to be far more than anyone expected. Their meeting became the very door through which art found a new space to grow. So, who was the doctor? For many years, Dr. Cuanang worked in hospitals. On the surface, his path seemed set: medicine, science, clinical practice. But his interest in art came much earlier. In one interview, he recalled that after 3 years of medical training at Harvard, he decided that before returning to the Philippines, he wanted to see the world. He traveled across Europe, Italy, Spain, and Greece impressed him most. He remembered lying on the floor of Sistine Chapel, looking at Michelangelo frescoes and marveling at the sculpture of David. At that time, to him, the most perfect sculpture in the world. He visited museums early in the morning, before the tourists arrived, to contemplate great art in silence and solitude. He later returned to the Philippines. At the hospital where he worked, artist Benedicto Cabrera, Bencap, began to visit. Bencap would later be named a national Filipino artist. He and other artists brought their works at the hospital, and through them Dr. Cuanang became part of the creative circle. They were plein air trips, helping a gallery found by Bencap and his brother. Dr. Cuanang even tried to draw himself, but as he joked, "I have 2 left hands," and quickly realized it wasn't his calling. Still, from then on, the deeply valued art as a process and a form of expression. He turned to neuroaesthetics, the science of how the brain perceives art. When a person looks at an artwork, a brain region that produces the happiness hormone activates. This brings sensations of calm, harmony, and even relief. Time passed. The doctor kept engaging with artists, watching how creativity affects people, and delving further into neuroaesthetics. In 1970, he bought a house and a plot of land. He didn't yet know what this place would eventually become, a space where art would find freedom, a voice, and its own home. Now let's go back to our students. What was the time like? The 1918s in the Philippines, the period leading up to the People Power Revolution that overthrew Ferdinand Marcos, who had ruled in the Philippines for more than 20 years. It was a time of unrest, a desire for freedom, and new forms of self-expressions. New initiatives were emerging. In Antipolo, for example, an ecological foundation was formed to protect local waterfalls. It began gathering young artists for field painting sessions. It all started with a group of students. Professor Fernando Sena saw potential in them and began offering free workshops and materials. Thus a small art collective formed. The young artists began working together and called themselves Saling Pusa. The phrase loosely refers to someone who participates formally in a name only, a kind of outsider. That's how they felt, a little outsiders, but with a voice that wanted to be heard. Through the Ecological Foundation, Saling Pusa met Dr. Joven Cuanang. He invited them to his home in Antipolo. They ate together, painted in the garden, and shared dreams and ideas. When he learned they had no place to exhibit their work, he started organizing shows for them right in the garden.
There were 15 of them. The beautiful part of it is that these artists who are very, very sensitive to the human condition were actually depicting through their art the socio-economic condition of the Philippines at that particular time. The relationships of the church, politics, and the social classes. And the artist said, what will we call it? And we said, Pinto. Then I said, why Pinto? Pinto is a door to the new century, a door to the new millennium, a door which will open to new ways of expressing art, new ways of people coming in to enjoy and be educated in art, and a door where people can converge to be able to discuss the importance of art. So that's why the name Pinto came about.
Thus the Salingan Gardens came into being, and later the Pinto Art Museum. The early works of Saling Pusa were sharply social. They were created against the backdrop of political change right after the People Power Revolution. The energy, anxiety, and hope of those years are reflected in one of their most powerful works, Carnival. Painted in 1992, the nearly 3-meter canvas became a visual protest, an artistic manifesto, the disappointment that followed the euphoria of liberation. The artist used the Carnival, a bright, noisy, slightly grotesque celebration known in the Philippines since Spanish times. In their version, however, the Carnival is no longer joy but an absurdity that mirrors the country's socio-political reality. In one section, a large man in a business suit watches a game where toy soldiers are aimed at unarmed farmers, a reference to tragic episodes in the nation's history linked to farmer struggles. In another fragment, Filipino women in traditional costumes are polished into a cart, a bitter reminder of mass immigration for work abroad. The comic book heroine Darna appears as a red light district dancer, a harsh satire on women's standing in the country. Even religion doesn't save. A priest hears a clown's confession, a grotesque image of faith and hypocrisy side by side. The red paper buffalo, a symbol of rural festivals, recurs in the composition as a reminder that the oligarchy returned, but under new guises. This is a work by one of the group members, Elmer Barlangan. Over time, he became one of the Philippines' best-known artists. I even wrote my thesis about him. His works are shown in the USA, Singapore, Japan, and beyond. At the heart of his art are ordinary people, workers, street vendors, jeepney passengers, farmers. His paintings carry a mystical atmosphere, elongated figures, tense poses, somber backgrounds, something faintly reminiscent of Munch. In the 2025, Berlangan participated in Art Basel Hong Kong, one of the most prestigious contemporary art fairs. Now let's talk about the museum complex itself. Art at Pinto is divided into two parts. One on one side, objects and artifacts of the indigenous people of the Philippines. On the other, contemporary art, which takes up the most of the space. There is a cafe on the ground surrounded by nature, tables and chairs are set outdoors. You can grab a bite and rest between galleries. The museum architecture is part of his art. Everything was designed by artist Antonio Leaño. He combined Spanish arcs and courtyards, Mexican decorative motifs, simple forms, and whitewashed walls inspired by mission-style architecture of the American Southwest. Massive walls, red tile roofs, arched passages, and inner patios. Leaño called his approach Ilocana Mexican, referencing Ilocana cultural motifs and vernacular architecture adapted to climate, landscape, and available materials. Now about the artist who moved me. Joven Cuanang works with the theme of memory, but his take on the past is not warm or nostalgic. It's critical and unsettling. One of the pieces, Pieta, at first evokes a familiar feeling. A woman in Filipino dress, like an old photograph, calm and almost sentimental. But then something uncanny appears. From the cane she holds seems to grow a piece of raw flesh, coarse and alien. It disrupts the familiar image and creates discomfort. This sort of intervention is typical from Cuanang. He disturbs the polished image of the past to restore its complexity and honesty. His work is built on the contradiction of the English word preserve, which can mean both to save and to keep, and to hold, but also to destroy when misapplied. To preserve true memory, he suggests we must erase falseness. I found the works of Anthony Palomo very touching. He is a contemporary Filipino artist who deals with memory and everyday life. He works primarily in figurative painting, but his images always seem slightly lifted from reality, soft light, muted colors, flowing forms. He often depicts people in quiet moments. His style is called romantic, not in saccharine sentimentality, but in capturing subtle, fleeting states. The sculptures of Agnes Arellano are so realistic, I feel the woman might open her eyes at any moment. Agnes explores female power, spirituality, and mythology. Her figures are at once vulnerable and sacred, as if we are peeking into someone's dream. There was a small but very interesting installation dedicated to José Rizal, the national hero who symbolized the struggle for independence from Spain. But the room did not tell us the familiar political narrative of the martyrdom story in full. Instead, it showed a different slide, intimate and incomplete. Only a few letters remained between Rizal and his fiancée Leonor. She kept them in a box, and when her mother insisted she marry another man she did not love, on the night before her wedding she reread all the letters, burned them, and sewed the ashes into the hem of her dress. So when she walked to the altar, she could literally feel love crumbling under her feet. The installation by Joel Allendy offers a gentle, unusual view of a story usually framed as political, but it leaves something unsaid, as if there is more that the room only hints at. Another work that struck me was Mother by Mark Giustiniani, who also used to be a part of Saleng Pusa. A naked female figure covers an old man as if protecting him from something unseen. The painting is muted, dreamlike, the woman's face is blurred, not a portrait, but an archetype. It's a piece about the material principle that never leaves us. Even in old age, we seek that quiet acceptance and unconditional protection. Mother here is not merely a person, but a feeling that remains even the person is gone. The museum grounds also include a hall devoted to ancient Filipino art. There are burial urns dating back to around the 3rd or 4th centuries, stone vessels used to secondary burial rituals. They served as a kind of second home for the soul. Many of them have lids covered as stylized heads. These burials reveal how deeply Filipino ideas about life, death, and respect for the departed were formed. There was also a collection of stones I wanted to learn more about, but unfortunately there was no plaque and I couldn't find information. Thank you for watching. Tell me what you think about Filipino art and the history of this museum. When I visited for the first time, I thought, oh, a museum. But after walking through everything, I realized you need about 4 or 5 hours to see it properly. There are 2 cafes where you can eat, so the whole visit takes roughly 5 hours. And of course, I want to go again. If you ever find yourself in the Philippines, I highly recommend it, and remember,
art is alive in the Philippines.